Hello everyone, welcome to the first ever RWBY review. Today we will be reviewing RWBY Volume 5, Chapter 11, The More the Merrier. Let's begin. So the episode starts off with the most amazing visual we have ever seen of the moon, and we also have the gang meeting up with Lionheart since in the previous episode Crow got a call from Lionheart telling him to meet up with him at the school without their weapons. Yet they brought them anyway because Crow and Ozpin were both suspicious of the whole situation. So they walk in and that statue in this scene looks amazing. Anyway, so the viewers can clearly tell that something's wrong since Lionheart seems to be nervous about everything. He makes excuses for why he's worried and just seems overall really anxious. Yang, being smart and clearly being the only one that knows what's up, looks around the room and sees her mother Raven sitting on a railing above. Yang calls her out, Crow fires at her, and she does the coolest transition in the human form that I've ever seen. And now everyone knows that this is a setup. What a turn of events. It's revealed to the gang that Raven has the Spring Maiden, yet still no one knows who she is, but I guess since that's all the info they needed, Crow tries to reason with Raven but fails. Then RWBY steps in, tries to do the same but with more emotion and words. After RWBY's failed attempt to convince Raven, she opens a portal and a fireball comes bursting through it to hit RWBY in the gut. Then Cinder and her group prepares from the portal. Great, now everything is going to hell. So Hazel walks through the door and tells everyone the White Fang are prepping demolition, so that means no one can escape. Also, Adam appears for like a couple seconds, so he's kind of irrelevant. So Cinder decides to throw Lionheart under the bus and tell Crow and the gang that Lionheart has been working for Salem for a while and is the reason why Crow couldn't find any of the huntresses or huntsmen he was searching for. And then comes one of my favorite parts in the whole episode, Jean. Jean in this scene has had enough of Cinder, and he just wants to get revenge. You can clearly see that Jean is very upset at Cinder and everything that she's done, so he steps up and he's not taking any more of her shit. I have to give huge props to Miles in this scene. He had the right amount of anger and sadness in his voice to make this scene very intense, but even after everything he said, what was Cinder's response to it all? She says, "Who are you again?" Ouch. So that was John's breaking point and charges right at Cinder, which was a huge mistake on his part because he let his emotions over Pyrrha's death get the better of him. And since Cinder is a maiden who is much more skilled than John, he could easily lose this fight. After all that, all of the fights start to begin. RWBY pairs off with Emerald, Yang pairs off with Mercury, Crow pairs off with Raven, Weiss pairs off with Renal, Oscar pairs with Lionheart, and both Nora and Ren pair with Hazel. In my opinion, I liked most of the fights in this scene because they were all pretty tense in their own way. The fights I don't like were Crow and Raven's because they didn't really get enough screen time to have the whole feel of their fight. Same case with Yang's fight, and kind of the same with Ren and Nora's. I like theirs the least though because they got a few seconds of screen time and all it was the opening fight, just with less cool music and one solid camera angle. Out of all of the fights that went on, Weiss's was my favorite because the music was very good and you could see she's trying her best to hold her own against Renal. I enjoy shows and movies that don't always have the heroes kick serious butt all the time. I like seeing them have a bit of trouble holding their own because it shows that heroes can always get stronger and they can improve and push themselves so they can overcome their challenges. During the Weiss and Renal fight, you can see that Weiss is trying her best to fight Renal, but she's struggling a lot, and it just gets worse for her when she tries to do another summon, and Renal fires two very powerful lasers right in the Weiss, breaking her aura. After Jean sees this, Cinder continues to taunt him and just be spiteful. John gets even more upset, and Cinder makes her sword into nothing but pure fire while going for the final blow. Now here's where things get a little to me. I both liked and hated the fact that RWBY used her Silver Eyes power. I liked it because it means that one of my favorite RWBY characters gets to live another day, but I didn't like it because RWBY doesn't really know the limits and doesn't really understand the true power of her Silver Eyes yet to be using it all willy-nilly. Then after that, an even worse scene happens in my opinion for 3 reasons. 1. Jean had plenty of time to strike Cinder in this part. She's grabbing her arm in pain and down on the ground vulnerable, but Jean just stood there and did nothing, giving Cinder plenty of time to avoid the attack. 2. I don't get why Jean did a forward thrust instead of a normal slash, because if he did a normal slash, maybe Cinder wouldn't have been able to avoid it. And 3. Jean really had no reason to fall over. He just fell for the sake of the plot in my opinion. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Cinder gets pretty pissed off, and it looks like that's the end of Jean. However, Jean opens up his big mouth and says that he doesn't care if he dies, cause his friends mean more to him than anything. Cinder gets a bright idea and sees Weiss go flying for Lord knows what, and creates a flaming spear and impales it right through Weiss. Then the episode ends with Weiss falling to the ground. Boy, what a roller coaster ride this episode has been. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode. There are some small nitpicks I have with the episode, like the fact that Ruby could deflect Emerald's bullets when she was standing like a few feet away from her, but other than that, I really enjoyed this episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to do more of these episodes in the future. Bye!